Hey, welcome back to another episode of The Locker Room. And today I have the absolute pleasure of speaking with Jason Tabansky. Jason, thank you so much for coming on.
I appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so Jason, you're the first of a couple things for me. You're the first veteran that I've had. Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
You're also the first Paralympic athlete that I've had. But you are my second gold medal winner. And if you have an issue with that, you have to take it up with Monica Puig, who snagged a gold in 2016, I believe. So you can go up against her, and she's a tough task.
Now, good. I'll cut my loss, man. I'm good.
Yeah, but in all serious, man, your journey is nothing short of remarkable. And I'm excited to dive into it. I want to start by giving the listeners a sense of your story and some of the challenges you faced and how you've been able to come out stronger in that. So can you walk us through the events that led to your paralysis and how you began to adapt to this new chapter of life?
Yeah. Well, no, again, I appreciate you having me on. And, we were catching up earlier about how things affect your life and how people overcome them, and I've been accustomed to challenges my whole life. It's not a sob story. It's not a for me. It's just reality for a lot of people. I was born and raised in a single parent home. I grew up with a single mom in South Texas with a huge Mexican family. And I think that helped mold me into the person that I became as I grew up, right? I had a lot of that tough love and, hey, suck it up and move on kind of things, right? So at 17, I decided to follow my grandfather's footsteps and join the military. He had served in the Mexican army throughout the early his 40s. So I just wanted to continue his legacy, but in the U.S. Army, right? So I joined the Army back in 2001, in August of 2001. Go through basic training, 9/11 happens, things just shift completely. Throughout my time in the military, I deployed to Afghanistan in 2002, Iraq in 05, 06, and then Afghanistan again in 12, 13. So I, my job in the military was something that I was in love with. I had a lot of purpose. I had a lot of drive. I was an aviation mechanic and crew member, and getting to travel the world and see things was what I had signed up for, right? So I'm going through all this and life is good. And all of a sudden in 2015, I'm in London doing a military expo, and I had an accident that compounded with a infection that I had in my neck. And all of a sudden I wake up as my body is shutting down in my hotel room. Just onset paralysis is starting to go in slow. And it took about 3.5 hours, 4 hours for me sitting up in my bed to not being able to completely move from the neck down. So I get rushed into surgery. And when I came out, the doctor's like, hey, man, you had a massive spinal cord bruise. It was about 18 inches of spinal cord damage. He's like, I don't know what to tell you. We'll just have to see what happens. He said, what you went through and what you had is something that I've never seen in my surgical career. And it's very, very, very rare. So I have no real answers. I'm like, the whole time I'm just laying in bed, kind of looking at him like, okay, cool. Like, there's nothing I can do, right? Control the controllables. So as time progressed, I went from not being able to move from my shoulders down to I recovered use of my arms. Then 6 months later, I was able to use my hands again. So my hands were completely paralyzed. I couldn't do anything. I relied on my wife to help me brush my teeth, shave my face, all those things that you take for granted. Now I'm putting them in somebody else's hands. And I could see how my life was going to be impacted if there wasn't a big turnaround, because I was so used to being independent, so used to doing so many things, being an outdoorsman, competing in sports. I played rugby. I played semi-pro football in Germany. I CrossFitted. I was in the military. I did everything. And all of a sudden it's gone. And I'm just laying in bed. I mean, I laid in bed for probably 5 weeks, the initial beginning of my injury. Got bounced around from 3 different hospitals to figure out what their next step was going to be until they finally sent me to a spinal cord rehab center here in San Antonio. And that's where I started my actual progression in recovery. Once I got started in that kind of catapulted my recovery. Like I said, I regained use of my hands. I started learning how to live a new life, which was being in a wheelchair. You know, I guess I always looked at people in wheelchairs and all I could think of was, oh yeah, they can't move their legs. Like they're paralyzed from the waist down or things like that. You never know what it is that people like that go through until you're actually in that situation, right? And my level of paralysis is actually from like the middle of my chest down. So I have no core function. I have no really bad balance where I fall over if I put both arms out, things like that. I can't control my body temperatures. If I'm outside in the heat for an extended period of time, I can't sweat. So my body
Interesting.
overheats. And I found out the hard way twice living in Texas. I wound up in the hospital
Yeah.
twice with
Well,
a.
especially in San Antonio, it's humid there
Exactly.
too.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was gonna be one of my questions. So, from the outside, you can't move anything. So I was gonna ask, so that affects like your internal organs as well, or
Yeah.
how does, what happens with that?
Yeah, so your level of paralysis kind of dictates what function you have, right? Everything inside is still working, but there's no real connection between the brain and that specific organ. So, like I said, body temperature, being able to sweat, a whole bunch of different things, and you learn to live with them and make changes in your life so that you don't end up hurting yourself more or end up in a really bad situation. But yeah, no, I the first year was rough because I was getting used to it. I was really positive coming out of surgery and going into this. I always took it as it's another challenge in life. I gotta get through it. I'm not going to sit here and feel sorry for myself. Surrounded myself with really good friends that had been in chairs for a lot longer than I have. Guys that are athletes, that are adaptive athletes, that they wouldn't let me say no or wouldn't let me. I remember I said, man, I'll never be able to do that. I swear one of my friends almost slapped me. He was like, no, 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 I don't ever want to hear you say that.
Yeah.
He said, it's not never, it's just different. And we'll get there.
Ye-
And yeah, in 2016, that's how they introduced me to archery.
Okay, so 2016 is whenever you got introduced to archery. So I'm gonna go back to when you first heard the news that you're going to be paralyzed from the neck down. What was what was the initial thought that came to your mind? Was it something that was like, you know, uh, an acceptance, or something that's like, no, I'm not going to accept that. I'm going to try to do more than that. Like, what was the initial like thinking in your head on that?
So when I got told that, I think the doctor did a really good job of letting me know what was going on because he said, again, I've never seen this. It's very rare. I don't know what's going to happen. He said, you've got as good a chance of walking as you have a good a chance as not. I'm not going to say yes. I'm not going to say no. We'll just see what happens. Within the first 3 days, I went from just shrugging my shoulders to actually being able to move my arms. So he saw that as a good onset of recovery. And he said, look, man, I don't want to give you false hope or anything like that. So I just, I took that and ran with it. I was again very positive. I kept on telling myself I'm not more special than anyone else to not deserve this. I
Got you.
I always used to think, a lot of people say, why me? So why not me? Um,
Mm.
I just, again, my beginnings and my family and everything taught me how to be accepting and humble and you know, control the controllables. I live by that. If I can't control it, well, then what am I going to do? Just be angry and pissed off at the world for the rest of my life? I was like, no, I'll, I'll adapt to this. And, if I get back up, cool. And if I don't, then so be it. It just wasn't meant to be.
Right. Yeah. And one of the biggest things for me is like my big family. I have a huge family too. I'm also Mexican, and I have like 60 plus cousins, first cousins, and I have, a bunch of aunts and uncles. So when we get together, it's fun. But one of the things that, I leaned on was, one, the faith that my family had, and two, like the tough love type stuff. One of my cousins, I learned to swim. He threw me in the pool. So you want to swim, swim, like those type of things. And although those come with some bad stuff, but on the other side, I feel like it helped me handle the issues in my life. That whole thing of like, it could always be worse, and be thankful for where you are right now. I feel like that came from my family, and that tough love type feel. Do you feel the same way about your upbringing and your family, and that helped you kind of carry the load of, being, paralyzed?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I grew up again with a strong family support. Um, a big faith was a big part of my upbringing and of my family. So we always hold on to that for everything, right? And then the other thing was when the doctor's talking to me about what could have happened because this infection that was growing in my neck. So basically what happened was I fell from a helicopter, didn't hurt myself. I just strained my shoulder really bad. And I guess it whiplashed up into my neck. And what I had going on in my neck, started getting inflamed because of that whiplash trauma to it. So as it was like an abscess that was growing in there and pressurizing my spinal cord. As it started growing up and growing down, the doctor was explaining to me, he said, yeah, you lost your hands because it hit this disc. You lost this because it hit this other disc. He said, when I went in there and cleaned it up, you were about a quarter of an inch away from it hitting your C3 cervical disc, and that controls your lungs. So you would have suffocated in your room and just never made it out. So I was really fortunate when he told me that. That was the, hey, you know what? I got another opportunity at life. I'm not going to waste this. I'm not going to sit here and be angry because, yeah, the flip side of that coin was I would have never made it out of my hotel room.
Man, that's so crazy how um you were that close for it to being just that different. I think maybe, I mean, just thinking along the way you are, like that's probably helps you deal with like, all right, hey, it could have been way worse. Like now let's focus on moving on that with your upbringing.
Hmm.
So now that brings us to 2016 when you started to do archery. Like obviously, competing and trying to be better at that is good for like your body and stuff. But what about for your mind? What was it like to get a new purpose almost from that? Or did you get a new purpose from that?
So when I started shooting, I was doing it for fun. Honestly, there was something that caught my eye, and I was like, hey, you know what? I've done this before. I've bow hunted before, and that was part of my therapy that I used to use before I was even hurt. I used to get off of work and grab a bow and go walk around the woods. I mean, just lost in the woods and lost in thought, just being outside, right? I said, I'll give this a try. So I go and do my first tournament, and I was actually pretty decent at it. I won that tournament. It was like a novice division, the entry level, right? So everybody's like, hey, try it again. So I go and do another one, did really well at that. And then I decided, you know what? I'm gonna give this a real run for it. My friend Marco had just gone to the Paralympics in Rio. And I said, dude, let's go to Tokyo together. So now I've got a goal, right? And that goal is giving me a new purpose in life, a new passion. I've got drive again because my life got flipped upside down. I lost my career. I lost everything that I used to do. And I was kind of lost for a little bit myself until I found that new purpose in life and gave me a little bit more drive, right? So I start competing in archery and I'm doing this and I was okay. Once I got up to the big leagues and started shooting with like the Paralympic caliber athletes, um, but I wasn't breaking through. Like I wasn't getting the scores that I needed to be on the team and do all this. And I was approaching it the wrong way. I was so focused on the equipment and I was so focused on, the actual technical part of it. I had no idea of how important the right mindset and the right mental game was for this. I had no idea that was even part of the sport. And it wasn't until 2018 when I was exposed to a big international team and I met somebody that was a sports psychologist there, um, that I finally realized, okay, I need to make a change.
Hmm.
So in 2018, I met Nicole, and it was just a very brief meeting. Hey, this is what she does. This is what she does for the team. 2019 is when I made my first World Championship team, and she traveled with us and went out to I think we're in the Netherlands for that. But that's when I was really, really introduced to how important having the right mental game and having the right mindset is for competing and not just competing in sports, but it bleeds over to your everyday life and it
Yep.
helps you be, I don't know, a better person, more successful, more organized, things like that.
Well, I feel like when you're set mentally, you can't just practice that in one facet of life. In order to be good at it, it has to bleed over into every part of your life so that it can be ingrained in you. Because if it's a process where you still have to think about it or think to do it, then it isn't cemented in your mind. I can speak from the same thing when I'm playing baseball. If I was thinking about my mechanics, things were off. It has to be something that is ingrained in your body to where you allow the work that you've done mentally and physically, allow that to flow and you're in a no mind type of situation. But I have a question though, because you said you have no feel or you have no control over your core.
Hmm.
how does that play into trying? Because I feel like you have to be pretty stable
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
in a target. So, like, how do you work on being static enough to be able to hit your target?
So in para archer, we have a couple divisions in there. There's the open division, which has guys in wheelchairs competing against people that are missing a leg, an arm, a hand, etc. Right? They have a lot more function. Then there's the W1 division where I compete in, where we have an upper body, which is your core function is impaired, your limbs are impaired. So even though I recovered my hands, I still have an impairment in a couple of my fingers are really, really weak and I have no feeling in them. Even though I can move them and use them, I still have an issue with them. So that qualifies as a upper body limb deficiency. And then obviously a lower body deficiency, which is limb movement and things like that, right? But because we're in that most impaired division, we're allowed to use straps. So we've got to reinvent how to shoot a bow from a wheelchair with no or with limited hand function. There's guys that shoot with me that can't use their hands at all. So it's up to the person to invent a way within
Okay.
the parameters of what's allowed. And yeah, I don't know, it took me 2-3 years to figure out what was going to work the best for me. And finally I had an idea. I was like, okay, if I take a belt and strap it across diagonally and I take another one and go off of that one to the side. So I have this idea. And then I went to an upholstery shop that they do a lot of auto repair. And I said, hey man, I've got this idea. I want to make it come to life. Can you guys help me out? And yeah, working with different people. Some people work with prosthetics experts. Some people work with, like myself, with upholstery shops or fabricators, things like that. And we just create these adaptations to be able to allow us to shoot, be as stable and as rock solid as possible.
That's awesome, man. It's cool that you get to have a team or you found your own team. And that's the other thing too. Like when you set a purpose or an intention, you then start to see things that support that. And that's part of what you were doing there is like, all right, well, I got to figure out a way to strap myself in so that I can be better at this. How can I do this? And you start thinking about it, start game plan. Then you
Exactly.
find other people, the things that stick out into your mind that you're on a path, but that's only if you're completely clear about your intention and what it is you're trying to do. And it sounds like you did that. The other thing I wanted to ask you is what type of training do you do that allows you to maximize your abilities as an archer? You know, what workouts do you do? What does your training look like?
Hmm.
I'm curious about that because I know for me, training for me, I do it specifically and different than other guys, maybe a little more intense for other guys, but that's because I was a smaller guy and had to train my body to withstand a certain load and effort level. So I trained that way. So for you in your sport and specifically for you, like what are things you do to maximize that ability of being an archer?
Yeah. So what I've done over the years, it's been evolving, right? I went from not knowing to getting with other people. And the one thing I love about this community is for the majority of us, we don't look at each other as competitors or enemies or anything like that, right? It's a community because first and foremost, we're doing this for fun. We're
Yeah.
doing this as rehab. We're doing this as an outlet of what we go through on a daily basis, right? So we see each other as people first. And we talk to each other and hey man, look, you've got the same injury as I do. We have similar function. But what do you do that works for you? What do you do to help you get through life and do this, right? And then it's first and foremost everyday life. That's one thing that I try and educate people. I say, hey, you look at high level elite athletes and you see how they perform. And that's awesome. I will never take that away from them. But they don't have to drag themselves out of bed and get in a wheelchair first thing in the morning, deal with all the issues that come with that, and then finally get to your training, get to your workouts and things like that. So we're trying to learn from each other on how to live life the safest, most efficient as possible so that it allows you to function and perform as an athlete even better, right? So I went through a couple of years of working with people, of picking people's brains, and I developed my own program eventually where my sport is more about endurance than strength. Because when we compete, our competition consists of two parts. It's a qualification round that gives you a ranking and puts you in a bracket. And then once you're put in a bracket, you go through a head-to-head elimination match where it's you lose, you're out, and you go all the way to your gold and your bronze medal matches, right? But that it starts with that qualification match, and in that qualification, you have to shoot 72 arrows for score, and you shoot them over a period of 3.5 hours. It's broken down to 12 rounds of 6 arrows apiece. And you do that outside. You're in the elements, you're in the heat, you're in the rain, you're in the cold, you're in the wind, you're in all that, right? So endurance is a big thing. I took that and I said, well, what is going to what is going to give me the best opportunity to make it through that whole qualification and be the strongest I can be and not falter throughout that or, be weak in like the 6th, 7th round, stuff like that. So took that, developed the workout program, went to the gym, started working out my shoulders, my back, my arms, whatever I could do with my arms. But it was all just moderate weight, high reps, like an insane amount of reps, and just building endurance instead of trying to bulk up. So yeah, I did that. And then on top of that, my practice every day, shooting archery, I was just shooting an insane amount of arrows on a daily basis. So I would shoot 200 to 300 arrows every day, so that when I went and shot 72, it felt like nothing. It'd be like, oh, that was my warm up. So I was doing that. Once I got through with that, I realized, hey, you know what? I got to change my diet because certain foods are making me feel sick, right? They're bringing me down. So I started cutting out a lot of processed foods, a lot of sugars, things like that. And I was doing that for sport, but then it started helping me out in my everyday life because now I'm waking up in the morning and I feel good. My body's functioning a whole lot better. It just improved my everyday life. But yeah, that's kind of how I approached it. Just building a program that was going to help maintain my body, build strength, build endurance, and then, fuel my body the best way possible.
Yeah, that's exactly. I mean, you're a high level athlete. That's what you're doing. That's what we do is we try to figure out. We understand that the competition is like the last bit of the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah,
And there's a
exactly.
whole lot of, from workouts to diet to all these different things that kind of feed into that. We were talking just before this podcast, and you mentioned that you had a instance in 2021 where you tested positive for something that was in your system, and you actually changed the way that they test for this, correct?
Yeah, so I was 2 days from leaving to Mexico, and I was going to Mexico to earn a spot to go to Tokyo. The goal that I'd been working for, right? It had already been postponed a year. We had gone through COVID. We're getting ready to go, and I get this email saying, "Hey, you tested positive for this substance." No idea what it was. Never heard of it. So I started doing research, and thankfully, I'm someone that keeps things that I look at them and I'm like, one of these days it'll help me later on in life. So as I'm doing my research, I find that this metabolite, this long-term metabolite, goes back and sorry, let me back up. This long-term metabolite can come from a designer supplement that is legally sold. You buy it online, things like no issue, right? It's not a steroid, it's not an illegal drug or anything like that. And when I see that, I was like, wait a minute, that sounds familiar. And I go back and look at my email, and I had an email receipt from when I had purchased this supplement back in 2012. Now, in 2012, I was in Afghanistan, and one of the things that I was doing there was I wanted to be in the best shape possible in case something bad happened. Again, I was a aviation crew member, right? So if my aircraft went down and I had to pull people out of it, or if someone had to pull me out of the aircraft, I wanted to be in the best shape so that, we could accomplish that mission.
Did
So,
it work? Did the supplement work?
oh, dude, I was ripped.
Oh, what was it,
Yeah.
man? I don't get tested no more. So
Yeah. I'll get you all the info after.
yeah.
But yeah, no, it worked for me. I got in really good shape, and I see that this supplement transforms into what I tested positive for. So I got together with a team of lawyers. We put together a case, found some medical professionals that were going to back me up. These guys were very familiar with it. They knew what they were going. And then I was the odd case. I was the once in a lifetime case that um, I could help prove that what people thought was the black and white for this drug, we could help debunk that and help shed the light so more people don't end up going through what I went through, right? So it took almost a year, went through arbitration, presented my case. We built a hell of a case with medical professionals backing me up. It's just proving that yeah, this thing was retained in my body because of the way that it's cleared. I wasn't able to do it post injury, and I had enough of it in me to where it was just going to bounce up and down. And, we went back into my tests because I tested positive for that one day. 2 weeks later, I was clean. Then I was back on, then clean again. And it was just
Wow.
bouncing back and forth. It depends on which fat cell your body burns and goes into your urine. And if that specific fat cell contains that, it's going to pop up. If it doesn't, then yeah, you're good. And the quantities that they were testing for was insane too. I tested positive for 53 trillionths of a gram. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
So
not enough to do anything.
nothing, right? I'm not getting any advantage, nothing like that. So we go through it, wound up winning that case. And, the way that we proved that things were not what they thought, that has helped instill different testing measures. People look at this differently and go, oh, okay, maybe what we thought was not all correct.
Right.
So a lot of people that were getting tested for it and might have popped hot for it, you know, they might not know this now because this was never published. It's not a public document, but yeah, a lot of a lot of careers are hopefully saved because of a new testing method.
But you still missed out on the Tokyo
I
Olympics
missed
though,
out on
right?
Tokyo. Yeah.
Damn, man, that's
Yeah.
gotta be well, especially after putting in all the work.
Yeah.
As the story of your life seems to be resilience, and you're able to continue to keep working. And that takes us to the Paris Olympics, and you were involved in that. I watched the podcast that you were on, and you were talking about how zeroed in you were, like to the point where you were still shooting hundreds of arrows a day, keeping the same routine
Yeah.
as before. Speak about that mindset and that just because there are people that once I saw it myself when certain guys got to the big leagues, it was like, made it. And their performance kind of looked like that. It was like they couldn't handle some of the stressors. They couldn't perform the way that they should have performed because they were almost complacent. And there were other guys that got there and they almost overworked. They almost did too much and kind of played themselves out of that. I was more of on the lines of the second,
Mm-hmm.
but there was a point where I found that middle line. So can you speak about how you're able to maintain that drive without allowing that to be the reason that you didn't compete the way you could?
Yeah. So I'll take you back to November of 2023. I was in Chile for the Pan American Games. I had an opportunity to earn a slot to go to Paris there, and I go into this competition fresh out of an injury without even knowing what was going on throughout the beginning of the year. I thought I had tennis elbow, right? Until I finally get back and checked out. Turns out I have a partial tear in a tendon and a ligament in my elbow. So I rehab it for 8 weeks, get 2 weeks to practice, head out to Chile for the Pan American Games. Get there, I qualified first on top of everybody. So, everybody's got that idea that, yeah, you're gonna destroy this tournament, you're gonna win this, right? And the pressure got to me. So when I went and shoot that gold medal match for the slot, I crumbled mentally. I could not figure out what was going on. And it was one of the most embarrassing losses that I've ever gone through, to where, I hit rock bottom with that one.
When you say crumble, what was the thoughts that you were thinking in that time? Like what caused you to crumble? Explain to me that a little bit.
Honestly, I don't know. I just know that when I was shooting, I couldn't get my head straight. I couldn't listen to my coach telling me to do something, to change something. Normally we have a coach standing behind you. And when you're shooting, if you have a pattern, they'll tell you, hey, move your sight. Hey, move this, do that. And in my head, I couldn't even rationalize what they were trying to do.
Did it feel like you were in a like dreamlight state
Yeah,
where
kind of like that.
a haze?
Yeah, kind of like a haze where you can't control anything. It's like, I don't know, have you ever had those dreams where I'll have a dream where like I'm trying to punch something and I can't,
Yeah, all
and
the
I
time.
just can't do it. So something like that. That's what it felt like. Like I could not do what I knew that I had to do. And again, I just crumbled, was a humiliating loss. And when I came home, all I could think of was, I got to fix this. I really, really need to fix this. So I reached out to Nicole again, and we started working a little bit more close, trying to fix that, trying to put my head back together. So on top of working with a sports psychologist, I reached out to someone else who's a mental coach. and I was working with both of them. A lot of people would say, "Oh, that's an overload." I said, "No, that's what I need. This
Yeah.
is what I need, and I know this is what's gonna help me." So in January of this year, I started working with them like full time. Nicole would I don't know, give me points on how to fix certain things, and then the mental coach would take those and kind of work into whatever else I needed. They taught me a lot of things that I needed, such as being focused, being process oriented versus outcome oriented, things like that. That a lot of people have probably heard. Rebuilding my self image and rebuilding my confidence in myself, making sure that I was going to be better prepared for anything to come, right? And that I could see how it was working by March. I went to another tournament. I went to Dubai to shoot another tournament, and my performance was a whole lot better, night and day. And then I go to another one in April, and I won that one. And it was just, again, just building little building blocks that are making me feel like, okay, I'm in a groove now. Everything I could see the results, which made me buy into the whole thing even more.
Well, how did you, so when you were seeing the results, how did you not then feed into the results meaning more than they should? Because when
Exactly.
you're in that, I've been in that zone where there was a stretch where, like, win or lose, it was like I was in another dreamlike state, but not the one that we were talking about before. It was, I was just like, I was like a train going down, and bullets, good and bad, were hitting off me. I was like, I'm centered. I'm good. Whatever happens, happens. If it's bad, I'll figure out why it was bad and I'll fix it. If it was good, I'll let it be. How did you maintain that, like, those blinders?
I don't know. Honestly, that I think that everything that I've been through, the faith, the being able to bounce back, being able to accept things happening, whether it's accepting that things are going to happen if they're meant to be or if they're not, if it's your time, if it's not, all these things that some people think are cliche. I started really, really accepting them. When I went to Dubai, that was another opportunity to earn a slot to go to Paris. Actually, that was the last chance qualifier for that. And when I shot the match that was going to give me the slot, I was winning all the way to the end. And the last three shots, even though I shot really well, the other guy wound up winning by 1 point and knocking me out. And it was hard. It was hard to accept, but I was happy at the same time because that's one of my really good friends. So I'm happy for him. I'm upset for me. Then we didn't get a chance to even let it sink in because we shot that match. I lost that one. 5 minutes later, we've reset the field and I'm shooting again for third place. And I think everybody thought that I was going to crumble on that one. And I turned it on and stomped that guy. And I had shot the highest score of all the four of us. And they're like, "What happened?" I said, "Well, I don't have time to sulk. Like I'm going to turn it around and, I still have a job to do. I'm not going to lose twice in a row." That was the big thing. So we get done with Dubai, I'm thinking I'm not going to quit. I'm just going to keep going. I'm going to keep shooting because you never know what happens. I'm just going to keep focused on my mission, and until that first arrow is shot in Paris, there's a chance I'm going to go. So I just kept on going, kept on competing, went to another tournament, won, building up. I go to a couple other events locally here in the States that we had trials for, did really well on those. And then in June, I went to Czech Republic to shoot another tournament, and this one is the last big tournament before Paris. There's a lot of the international shooters that are going to be in Paris are there, right? So I'm going through that one. I wound up in fifth place. I placed fifth, and I'm thinking, okay, fifth out of everybody going to Paris, I can deal with that. Like I can accept that. That's acceptable in my performance outcome. Next thing you know, 3 days later after that tournament, I get a phone call saying, "Hey, somebody got hurt. You're going." I was like, "Wait, what?" They're like, "Yeah, it's official. You're going." So I was like, okay, I'm happy. Holy crap, I got 6 weeks before I go. Those last 6 weeks, I mean, we hit it hard on the mental side, on the physical side, on the training side. But I made sure that every day I was dedicating at least 2 hours to my mental training, whether it was focus training, distractions, all these little things where my coach would have me shoot and then he'd have a bunch of kids behind me screaming, running, doing a whole bunch of stuff. I would sit there and just stare at objects, trying to focus on them and making sure that my mind wouldn't drift or do anything like that. Because whenever I get ready to shoot and your mind drifts, that would be the equivalence of you getting on the pitcher's mound, communicating with your catcher, figuring out what you're going to throw. And right as you're winding up to throw, you start thinking about what's going on. What are you going to cook for dinner? Next thing you know, you've thrown the ball away from where it's supposed to go. Right. Same thing with me. If I come down and I settle into my shot and I'm aiming, and instead of letting my subconscious take over and not think of anything crazy and just go through my process. And I'm like, man, it's noisy back here or this and that. Next thing you know, I'm out the 10 into a 8 or 7. And that just puts me in a bad situation. So I'm going through all these little drills that I've talked to both the mental and the sports psych about. And at the same time, my coach set up every day we're going to shoot the matches that I needed to shoot in order to win. So we knew that the bracket, wherever it was, I was going to have to shoot 4 matches. So every day we shot 4 matches. You know, what scores are going to get you to win? We came up with a number, and if I stayed within that range, I was gonna be okay. So the first 2 weeks, was a little bit of a struggle. It was frustrating because I wasn't hitting what I needed to hit, and then all of a sudden everything just clicked, and I got in that groove, and I did not let it go. 7 days a
What
week.
do you think clicked though? What caused that click? I feel like there's subtle little things that lead to that click sometimes, or was it just like I woke up one day and it just finally clicked?
No, I think that, working on all those drills, working on everything that I was told, it finally was so ingrained into me that muscle memory just took over.
Yeah.
And it's not like I woke up one day, it probably was a transitional period, almost like a
Right.
fade into it. And I
Like
noticed
you
it.
got a feel of it, and
Yep,
then you kind of built off that feel.
exactly. But I didn't notice it. I didn't notice that it was transitioning in the right direction until it finally hit the right direction. That's when it really was very present, and I was able to notice it completely. So that week 3 through 6, I was in a groove, and I did not let go. I was shooting a high amount of arrows. I was doing my mental training. I was living a routine that I thought, I'm not changing this. I'm going to maintain this, and it's not going away. We get to, I think it was like a week and a half before I fly out. And those 4 matches that I'm shooting every day, I started competing against my wife because she shoots archery too.
Okay.
So we're shooting against each other. And I mean, she's fierce competitor, man. She wants to win. She wants to, exert her dominance. And she was beating me the first couple of weeks, but that last week and a half, I'm on fire. Like she can't beat me. And I mean, that just builds me up because she's an able body shooter. I'm beating her. I'm doing really good. Everything is working. I'm not changing a thing. So fly out to Paris, get there. We were there a week, yeah, about a week early, before opening ceremony. The first day we get into Paris, we go and drop off our bags, and coach is like, all right, if you guys want to rest or this and that, we're going to go check out the practice field. I was like, yeah, I'm coming with you. I haven't shot today, so I need to go do this. Get out, get out to the practice field, practice that day, practice the next day. Every chance that I got to shoot, I did it. I didn't change a thing. And I still maintained the mental practice. Again, I repeat that all the time because it's very, very important. You've got to give it time. If not, don't expect it to work. So I kept up with that. Every little thing that I was doing at home, I tried to mimic it when I was out there. And eventually it became an autopilot where I got in such a groove that it was hard for me to get out of it. It just flowed naturally, and it went all the way till that day when I shot my medal matches. I started that morning. We didn't have a lot of time to practice. We just warmed up for a little bit, and man, I started right off the bat. I was doing really well. I'm like, you know what? I'm not changing this. I'm one of those people that I don't eat breakfast. I don't do a lot of stuff in the morning. So that day, I was like, you know what? I haven't eaten today. I'm not going to eat. I'm not going to change that. I'm just going to take a little protein shot, and I'll have a little snack. That's it. Kept my
Yeah,
routine.
you were hungry. You were hungry, but not for food. You're hungry for
No, no,
that.
no. Exactly. So I just wanted to go compete. And I remember that day when I got there, I set my mindset at the beginning of the day. I told myself, hey, I'm not here to win a gold medal. I'm here to shoot 15 good shots that are
Mm.
going to get me the success that I need. Changing my mentality from the outcome. A lot of people say, "Oh, I want to go win a gold medal." Okay, let's break that down. What do you need to do to win a gold medal? Well, I need to perform well. Okay, let's break that down. What is a good performance? Well, it's shooting 15 good shots. Let's break that down even more. What's a good shot? Break it down all the way down to the lowest level, so that way you can build it the way that it needs to be for you. And I set my mind that morning. I said, I'm here to shoot 15 good shots every match, and that's gonna equal whatever happens, because I can't control what the other guy shoots. He
Right.
shoots better than me, then he shoots better than me. And I set my expectations. I said, I'll be happy with top five. I'll be content. That'll be a success for me. So I get out there and I go through my first match and just breeze through it. And that first match was actually against the guy that beat me in Chile.
Wow.
So I get to shoot against him and shot amazing that first match. I go against my second one and I'm feeling good. I'm feeling confident. I'm in a good spot. Everything's clicking, just breezing through. The guy that I shot against my second match, that was his fifth Paralympic Games. The previous four, he had been in a gold medal match, each one. He's got 2 golds, 2 silvers. I mean, the guy is like the godfather of my division, but he's
That's
also
cool.
a really, really good friend of mine. We have an amazing friendship because he was one of the people that I reached out to when I first got hurt and I first got classified. And he helped me a lot with, hey, this is how things are going to work. Try this, try that. So getting to shoot against him I was happy because it's an opportunity that when am I going to get this again, where I get to shoot against the top guy at the Paralympics, at the highest event in our sport. But I'm also thinking, man, if you want to be the best, you got to shoot against the best. So let's go. Let's get out there. Let's do this. Got through that match and won that one. So now, man, I'm on cloud nine, just firing on all cylinders, just getting through them. Go to my third match, which is probably the hardest one because it's a semifinal. If you win a semifinal, you go to a gold match, which means that you're going to go home regardless with
Right.
something, right? If you win, you get a gold. If you lose, get a silver. But you're going home with something. If you lose the semifinal match, you go to a bronze. And if you lose that one, you go home empty-handed, right? You're fourth place. So it's the toughest match to get through. And once I got through that semifinal and figured and realized that I'm going to a gold medal match, that's when things started hitting me. That calmness, that coolness that I had was a little shaky because now I'm shooting for gold in the Paralympics and millions of people at home are watching. I'm used to a couple hundred, maybe 1,000 people watching live or anything like that. But now we're on mainstream TV and all this is going on. And the biggest honor for me is wearing that U.S. shirt representing the country and representing all our people and all the sacrifices that everybody has made. I'm starting to sit there and think I'm in the call room waiting to go out to the match. And I'm thinking of all the amazing people back home that helped me get there, from my doctors, my PTs, my rec therapist, all my friends in the military that I have that, never came home, that are gone, that I know that are there with me in spirit. I've literally got the weight of the nation on my back. And I guess some people would let that weigh them down or let that pressure get to them, but I use that as fuel.
Yeah.
I remember looking at my coach and saying, hey, man, we didn't make it this far to go home second. We're going to go out there and do this. And if I don't, at least know that I'm going to give it my all.
Yeah.
So we got out there to the match, and now the stadium is full. Everybody's screaming. I see a lot of French people with American flags, which is awesome. Uh,
Yeah.
and we start going through it, right? And I just remember still being in that zone where as soon as that buzzer rings, the whole world disappears. And it's almost like tunnel vision, where it's just me and the target and nobody else is there. I can't hear anybody. I can't see anybody. I'm just there to do something. That kept through all the way to my last 3 arrows. When I shot my last 3 arrows, I was up and basically the match was mine to lose. So that was when I felt the most pressured. And I'm so happy that I did all the work before, because that really let my subconscious take over.
That I wanted to ask about those last three because I watched those three on a YouTube video.
Yeah,
And you were up by 3 points, I think it was something like that, right? And then your third shot you hit like a 7 or a 8.
I got a 7.
7,
Yeah.
yeah. And then the other guy shot and he shot like a 7 or 8 as well, something like that. And then your second shot, you were kind of way off the mark a little bit, right? In that moment, did you kind of feel a similar feeling as you felt when you said that you felt like you were crumbling? Like, was there like a little bit of a like, hey, I'm here? Was there some of that? And then if there was, how did you like kind of knock it down to lock it in? Because your third and final shot was a 10.
Yeah.
So you overcame that. Like, how did you handle that slip up? Because again, like you mentioned, it was yours to mess up and you were off the mark a little bit. So I wanted a little more insight into that specific shot and how you righted the ship after that as well?
So that those last three, those were almost, I mean, it's hard to explain because I feel like everything else that I was shooting, everything was just on autopilot and on cruise control. Everything was happening on its own, right? And those last three, I turned the cruise control off and decided to drive myself because of the pressure and the nervousness. So that first arrow I knew was a good shot. Get it off. Everything is good. That second one, what happened was I dropped down, came off the 10 ring down. And as I was trying to bring my sight back up, normally what I would have done is I would have let down, reset the shot and start from scratch again. But what I did was I pushed it too hard and I released the arrow as my hand was coming up. So that's why I hit high. I was very, very fortunate to have been taught by my coach on how to self-assess, because the coach that was there with me is not the coach that I work with at home. So the coach at home, who's also one of my best friends, he taught me to self-assess. And he preached that. He said, Jay, you're going to be out there by yourself. You're going to have to assess a shot and realize, is it mental? Is it mechanical? Or is it physical? So when that happened, as soon as it happened, I knew it's my fault. I screwed up. I should have, I pushed it up. So I looked back at Jonathan, at my coach there, and I said, hey man, I tapped my chest. I was like, it's me. It was me. I pushed it. No worries. I got this. I was able to completely forget about that because in my mind, I knew that I caused it, not that I had a mental slip up or that I had a mechanical slip up. I knew exactly what I had done wrong and I knew how to fix it. So I get to that last shot and I'm facing this massive jumbotron. And when I look up there, it says 8 to win. And man, that you talk about pressure. All I could think of was, and I'll walk you step by step of my thoughts throughout that whole last shot. I look up, I see 8 to win. My first thought is, don't screw this up. My second thought was, don't say that.
Yeah.
And then I went into almost like a mantra where I just repeated to myself for like, I don't know, 2 or 3 seconds. You've been doing this all day. You got this. You've been doing this all day. You got this. And then the guy shoots. I'm ready to go. It's my turn. I see the clock turn over to me, took a deep breath, and I set up myself before I shot. I said, just put it in the middle, and that's it. Just put it in the gold. I draw back. I know that I'm going to start like coming down slow on it. And when my pin hits the gold, something in my mind told me that I'm going to punch this thing and I'm going to let it go. So I need to kind of take it easy. There was a giant swarm of gnats flying in front of me, and you guys can see it on the video. I mean, there's this cloud of gnats just flying in front of me. And as I was coming down, I'm looking at the target, and all of a sudden my eye goes to my sight, which is where the gnats are. And my first thought was, don't breathe through your mouth. When I'm telling myself that,
Mr. Protein.
exactly. Well, I just didn't want to sit there and choke on them, right?
Yeah, sure.
As I'm telling myself that, it gave me a split second of distraction. And when I go back to the target, my pin is dead in the middle. So I just popped my arrow and off it went. So it was just a split moment of distraction and being in the right mindset that got me through that last shot, because I was super nervous. I mean, people could see it in my hand. I was shaking. It was a culmination of everything, like everything that you've worked for, in my case, for the last 7 years, comes down to that one shot. And it just worked out perfectly. You know, I was able to put it together, make sure that my head was in the right place, and let my subconscious take over and correct whatever my body was going to do. It was going to bring it right back to that muscle memory of everything I've been doing that day.
Man, that's one of the best. That's one of the things that I miss about playing, is being in that exact zone that you talk about, where maybe something negative happens, maybe something good happens, maybe there's a crowd yelling, whatever it is, it had no effect on me. Or if I wanted to use it, like let's say the crowd, I was at a away stadium and they're cheering against me, I would use that as fuel. I'm like, all right, today I'm going to use that. You know what I mean? Or if I'm like, oh, there's too much stimulation, I'm going to zone out. And then all of a sudden, boom, I wouldn't hear anything and I'd be focused right on the target. So like when I was in the zone, I was able to do that. And the only way you can control that or get to that point is if you have a mental skills routine or like a practice, and like you're constantly figuring out ways to right your mind and not allow distractions to come about. But what was the feeling like winning the gold? And like, just for me, I would say it'd almost be like seeing everything that you've went through to get here, almost like a montage in your head or whatever. And then like, what was that feeling like to finally accomplish that and to realize that you won gold for the United States?
Yeah, man. I mean, the first thing that I could feel was gratitude. Just thankful for the opportunity to be there. You know, again, just the blessing of being able to compete and perform. I felt proud. I really felt proud for being able to represent our country. And then just I don't know, every emotion that I had suppressed for the last 7 years was just trying to come out. And that's one thing that I wanted to touch up on is the feeling of winning after bottling up so much. Everything comes out, right? But it left me completely empty afterwards. Like I was
Mm.
drained, completely drained, emotionally, mentally, physically drained. I didn't have a chance to deal with that right away because as soon as I won, I had to go do media interviews for about 2.5 hours. Then I had to go to doping control for another hour and a half and do all that. And then when I finally got to meet my wife and hug her, and we both sat there and just cried and were happy and everything. That's when everything was out. I had to shoot the next day. I had a mixed team match that I had to shoot the next day, and that was tough for me to get through because again, I was completely empty, drained. Dealing with that took me a couple of months actually to get back to a position where I'm ready to go for the next year. That situation where you fight and you struggle and you go through so many different things and then you finally it all comes together, right? And the culmination was winning. That's the best feeling I could possibly ever have in my life at that point, I guess.
Right, right.
It's hard to explain. It really is hard to explain. It's one of those things that people have to go through it and be there to get a full understanding of it. But my best explanation is, I just felt happy. I felt happy. I felt sad because my friends that have passed weren't there to see it. Proud for everybody that I was able to represent. I felt like I've finally done what I thought was just a dream.
Mm.
And then once I was done with that, then I started thinking, well, what do I do next? Like
Yeah.
what's next? Like I've accomplished what everybody wants to accomplish. What I do next. So it's taken me a couple months, but I've enjoyed what I've done the last 2 months or 3 months now is I've enjoyed everything that comes with it. I've done a couple presentations, I've done a couple appearances, I've done everything that I never expected because that's not what I signed up for. I didn't
Right,
I didn't do it for the fame or for people knowing who I am or whatever. I did it for those around me. But I've
right.
really enjoyed everything else, right? Because I've been able to speak to people that are going through things that I can identify with. I've been able to talk to kids that have Olympic dreams. I work with kids with disabilities as well. And I've been able to show them that, hey, your life might be different than all the other kids, but guess what? You have an opportunity to be great and it's there for you to take. So we've got a couple kids that have now made the national team, and I'm going to be shooting with them next year. Just really, really focused on all this other stuff that reignited that fuel and has kind of kickstarted that passion and that drive again. And it's right at the right time when I need it. I've started training again because I'm getting ready for. I've got a couple minor indoor tournaments. We're in indoor season right now. In the wintertime, we shoot indoors at 20 yards. But I've got a couple of tournaments like that I'm going to use to prepare myself for next year because come the end of February, I'm back outdoors in Dubai. That's my first tournament. And then I have a couple other events throughout the year. But in September of next year, we have a world championship in South Korea. I've never won a world championship. So,
Okay.
you
There's a
know,
new,
that's
that's a new
that's
goal.
add that to the list of things that I want to accomplish in my professional career. So yeah, the success that I had in Paris, I attribute it to a lot of preparation, but the big thing was the mental preparation to it. I think I could have been the most physically prepared, the most technically prepared, but if I had a weak mind game,
100%.
it would have not. I would have crumbled with the pressure.
I see it. I saw it often, man. There was guys that were way more capable than me, way more talented, way more prepared, maybe, and knew all these different things, but they just didn't have the mindset. And whether it be on or off the field, or both, because you got to have both to be able to maintain that. There's some guys that could figure it out on the mound, but they would let loose out, and they get in trouble and it just mess up a lot of the stuff. And the other point that I wanted to touch on was, I had a very similar feeling when I was done playing with baseball. It's like I accomplished my wildest dream, and it was a very rare thing to do, and I did it. And I outlived my dream, and it was like one of those feelings of like, well, what the hell do I do now? Like, that's all I could ever think about was baseball, and and all that stuff. And like at the more I've gotten, the longer I've gotten away from the sport, the more that purpose is starting to come. It just takes a little bit of time to allow yourself to kind of expand that vision. And it seems like you are finding a purpose with helping others as well now too. I mean, you've been doing it, but now it's even more of a precedent to be like, all right, you're starting to find a path on how that can feel like a hole or feel like a need that you no longer have. You know what I mean? With winning a gold medal. So I'm glad that you're starting to work your way out of that and find that. I talked to a lot of other baseball guys that are retired now, and they kind of have a similar feeling. So that's a normal feeling, and each one of them, the further we get out from that, the more we find our purpose outside of our job. We become more than just our job, because
Yeah.
at times we become our job, and it becomes the most important thing. We think we are that. But a couple more questions, and I'll let you go.
No,
Um,
you're good. I just,
yeah, go ahead.
what you were just saying really, really resonates with me. For you guys, you've reached the peak of what you do. You play baseball throughout your whole life, and then you get to the major leagues, and that is your pinnacle, right?
Yeah,
But that doesn't define you. That doesn't define who you are. And I've gotten to know a couple people. I've been fortunate to meet some other people. A friend who's a pro NFL player, and me growing up playing football, that was my dream. Like, oh man, I would love to play in the NFL, get the chance to play in the NFL, and this and that. But when I've sat and talked to him, football doesn't define him.
mm,
It almost he almost helped me defantasize the sport, because now I see them as real people that it's a job. Some guys are absolutely in love with the sport and are nuts about it, but other people look at it as a catapult to their future. You're going to go, yeah, you reach the pinnacle of your sports career, but what you're going to do after it is what really defines you. And the impact that you can make on other people is what really defines that person. And a lot of people have approached me about that and said, hey, you know, you're a pro archer, you've reached the pinnacle of your career. Is that all you want to do, and this and that? And I'm like, no, I don't. I do it because I love it. Number one, it's a passion of mine and it's fun. Once I lose the fun of it, I think I'll probably stop doing it. But it's something that I do want to continue. And it is who I am right now,
right.
but it's not who I'm always going to be. I have goals that I want to accomplish. Another question that I get asked a lot is, are you going to stick around for the next one? Are you going to go defend your title? I'm like, well, no, it's not about defending my title. I do want to go to the next one because it means a lot. It's at home. It's in the US, but I don't have the pressure of, I better win that next one too. Good. I've got to let that go, because if you focus on that, I mean, it derails your life completely. You're
Well,
over
because
pressure.
yeah, when you set a goal like that, like I have to win this next one or I have to defend it, anything that is other than that outcome is a failure in your mind.
And you're done.
And when you think that way, it's like it's tough, because if you don't win, then what are the odds you make it to the next one? And there's a whole nother set of issues. But when you walk with gratitude, and when you approach it that this is fun, this is something that I do, this isn't me,
Exactly.
that allows you to, like, hey, maybe you may end up at the one here and maybe you win it. You know what I mean? But it isn't something that's the only way that you can be successful, because success comes in many, many ways. You are successful right now, and not because you won a gold medal, but because you're helping others, and because you're doing it every day. You know what I mean? Like that's success. And that's one of the another reasons why I like this podcast, because we talk about the different forms of success, and it's not just about being a major leaguer or being a gold medal winner, and all those things.
Yeah.
It's mindset behind it. And when I've talked to a lot of people on here, it's more about like the process. They fall in love with the process more so than the result. And that's the reason why I believe that a lot of these people have seen and continue to see success on and off the field, because they separate themselves from who they are as a player and who they are as a human. And that's a big thing. Last question. As you reflect on everything you've been through, what advice would you give to anyone that's been through a life-altering event who may not see the light at the end of the tunnel just yet?
That's a tough one, man, because a lot of people take things differently.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody that I talk to, a lot of the interactions that I have face to face, I always tell them, I say, hey, look, I'm going to talk to you. You're going to think that I'm full of crap, or that this all sounds cliche or anything. But as cliche as it sounds, I want you to take it to heart. Life's not over. That's the first thing. Don't quit. Don't quit on yourself. Don't quit on your family. I get it. I've been there. I've gone through rough situations. I've gone through rough situations even out of a wheelchair before I was hurt. You just got to find a way to do things differently. Whether you've had a life-changing accident and you've lost a limb, or you're in a wheelchair or something like that, you've got to understand that life goes on, and regardless of what you might think, there's always a way to do things. Um, the world doesn't adapt to you, you adapt to the world. But when you surround yourself with the right people, they're going to help that adaptation become a little bit more seamless. You've got to have the right people around you, because if you don't, everybody else is just going to bring you down. People that sit there and pity you and give you the "I'm so sorry" and this and that. I always tell people, "What are you sorry for?" My sense of humor helps me out a lot. I take things very light sometimes, and I get that, "Oh man, I'm sorry that you can't do this." I'm like, "Dude, what are you sorry? I've saved a lot of money on shoes for the last 9 years." Just things like that, cracking jokes, or you got to understand that I'm not able to go run a marathon, but I'm able to go and compete and represent the country throughout the world. And it's been because I've had the right guidance, I've had the right friends, I've had the right support group. So if somebody's going through a bad situation, reach out. There's a lot of organizations, a lot of programs out there that have been put in place to help people that are going through something really, really rough. I always tell people I'm an open book. Reach out to me. You can Google my name and find a way to get a hold of me. I have no issues answering questions, helping people out. Hey, they want to get started in a sport. Cool. If it's archery, awesome. If it's not, then I can refer them out to different other programs, right? Get out of the house, get some fresh air, get some sun, get all that stuff that heals your mind. Because once you heal your mind, your body follows. I'm a firm believer in that. If you're sitting at home and you're depressed and you're upset and that's all you do, just staying indoors and locked up is not going to make it better. Get outside, talk to someone, get the help you need, and then go do something awesome. Go do something epic in life, and let that be the legacy that people remember you by. I forget who I was just talking to the other day, and I said, I don't want people to remember Jason, the guy in the wheelchair. I just want people to remember Jason, the man, right? The wheelchair wasn't always part of me, and a lot of my friends that have served with me and I've known pre-accident, they still look at me the same way as they did before. It's almost like I'm just wearing a different pair of pants or a different pair of shoes. It
Right.
doesn't make a difference.
Now you just sit down all the time.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, I'm the guy that brings the chair everywhere he goes. So I don't ever
Yeah.
worry about a seat.
Yeah.
So
No, that's awesome, man. And again, I thank you for being on this. I was excited to talk to you, and just your insight, your mindset, to handle all the things you've been through and still have a positive mindset, and to win a gold, and to that not even be the pinnacle for you. It feels like there's so much more in you. Thank you again for hopping on, and I wish you the best of luck. And I don't think this is gonna be the last time we talk.
no, absolutely, man. Like I said, I'm an open book. I'm here. You got my number. Let me know whenever you want to chat, or if there's anything that you feel like we could do to help people out there, get a message out to people. I'm all about it.
Yes, sir. All right, man. Well,
Appreciate
have a
it.
good.
Thanks,
Yes,
man.
sir.
Take care.
You too.